backwater of yesterday, the superpower of tomorrow. After decades of European bullying and even more decades of civil war, strife, and invasion by the Japanese, China looks to rebuild itself as the foremost power of Asia and eventually the world. Under the leadership of the Communist parties, great strides have been made in building a new China. But this new China is volatile. If China reforms too slowly, it may be destroyed. If it reforms too quickly, it might destroy itself. So hey comrades, welcome to the quarterly upload on this channel, and you join me today where we'll be playing as China with maximum aggression on the Millennium Dawn mod. As China, we will be aiming for maximum aggression, and the way we are going to handle this playthrough is that we'll divide the types of aggression into 4 escalating categories: domestic aggression, national aggression, regional aggression, and finally global aggression. You'll know what those mean later down the line. So without further ado, let's get started with our playthrough. And what better way to do that than to start with the focus: Chairman Jiang's reign. May the 20-year wild ride, or however long this takes me, begin. The successor of the illustrious Deng Xiaoping to the presidency of China, Jiang Zemin was a man committed to free market reforms as well as the political supremacy of the CPC. In the years leading up to the turn of the millennium, Jiang kicked off his term with a number of different policies, including a series of privatizations. The first thing we have to deal with in our first stage of aggression is none other than the leadership struggle of the CPC. As much as the Communist Party of China likes to present itself as a strong, united entity, it's not immune to fissures along factional lines. We must choose which, if any, faction we desire to favor. To be quite honest, between the Communist Youth League, which I guess is marginally more politically liberal and aligned with the rural lower classes, and the Shanghai clique, which I guess is more economically liberal and pro-business, I don't think there's a distinctive choice as to which clique is more aggressive. But for the sake of keeping this video about a certain leader we all know and love, we'll stick mostly with history and go with the Communist Youth League. The rise of the Communist Youth League, or the Tuanpai faction, has allowed Hu Jintao to assume leadership of the PRC. His vision for a country is one that is less growth-oriented and more in tune with those left behind by China's rapid development than Jiang's. Now, with Hu as our leader, we do have the option of doing some focuses about his policies. But for the sake of getting our boy into power as soon as possible, we'll go straight into the succession question, where we once again face the option between the Youth League and the Shanghai clique. We already know which one we're going to pick. So now, with the Wang Legion incident, resulting in Boss Ali's fall from grace, the path is clear for a smooth transition of power to Vice President Xi Jinping. A princeling who does not fit squarely within the Youth League faction or the Shanghai clique, Xi will have to build consensus and achieve compromise within the politically turbulent Communist Party. And with that focused on, our boy Xi, reminiscent of a certain cartoon character, has risen to power. Now, with our boy Xi in power, our move should undoubtedly be towards the complete control of power. And the way we are going to do that is with a large anti-corruption campaign, weakening the influence of both the Youth League and the Shanghai clique, leading to the centralization of power. Now that we have eliminated our political rivals, we can accumulate power around our leader to an extent that has not been seen in China for decades. We shall establish a cult of personality around our great leader. And finally, with the amendment of the Constitution and the removal of term limits, the time has come to put an end to the unstable transitions of power that have caused so much chaos within the party. China will prosper under the long-lasting leadership of Xi Jinping. Our consolidation of power is now complete. Of course, the domestic policy of a country is not just about who the leader is, but more importantly, what the leader does. And as China, we are faced with 2 important policy decisions, which is regarding, of course, the internet and religion. Internet-wise, we can just ban the internet entirely if we're going full aggressive here, but I feel like that won't be as interesting, so we will allow the internet, just under our supervision. After all, the World Wide Web is a dangerous place, and we should do our best to protect our citizens from the parts of it which most threaten them, such as this outrageous game called Hearts of Iron and the site. I don't know if you've heard of it. And we have to ensure that subversive, untrue, and divisive content stays out of the sight and mind of the Chinese people. We can also do this, the social credit scheme, which frankly created a meme that's actually never really been that fun. Social credit will be an effective way to incentivize good behavior and single out bad apples living among us for special attention. Why did I agree to do this video? And finally, we can do the 50-cent army, i.e. what you get called on Reddit when someone disagrees with you. Okay, now for religion. I want to go through this quickly, so bear with me, alright? So basically, as we are going for the aggressive path, we are going to go for proper state atheism, which is the historical path, in case you haven't caught on. Within this branch of focus, there are two sub-branches which deals with the Falun Gong and Xinjiang respectively. The Falun Gong is basically this very strange religion with a lot of wacky ideas. I'm not going to go that much into it, but either way, we're going to do a little bit of trolling there. Okay, now for Xinjiang. The Uyghur minority of Xinjiang has been viewed by the Chinese authorities with suspicion. This militant threat cannot be ignored, however, we must balance the need to fight terrorism with the need to win over the hearts and minds of the local people. How are we going to achieve that, you ask? Well, of course, by doing a little bit more trolling and providing the locals with patriotic and secular education. Nothing else. And there we go, except for some more economic stuff we can do, we are mostly done with our domestic policies. And with the domestic policies completed, it's time for us to move to our next stage of aggression, national aggression. As the world's largest country by population and fourth largest by landmass, it is no wonder that there are those who wish for greater degrees of autonomy within our republic. We should consider whether to hold the country together at all costs or to grant space for autonomy within our one China. Okay, now that we've gotten the boring focuses out of the way, it is time for us to do the exciting job of expansion, more specifically about the question of Hong Kong and Taiwan. As some of you may know, I come from one of these regions, so this creates a very awkward situation for me. But focus-wise, what we are about to do is actually quite straightforward. You know, in this timeline, we're not gonna take any half measures. No more, you get to keep two systems. But we'll also jail your entire opposition party. Instead, we're gonna go with a full measure and just outright annex the whole of Hong Kong and Macau. Up until now, the constitutional documents of both Hong Kong and Macau, their basic laws have prevented us from exercising a high degree of control over the territory. Now, by making a complete return of the SARs to our authorities seem like a consensual process, we can finally do away with these remnants of past humiliation at the hands of the colonial powers. This inevitably leads to mass protests in the city. Hey, I've seen this one before, and the choices we have are... well, there are no choices. Following protests in the SAR of Hong Kong, China has ordered multiple units from the PLA to take to the streets of Hong Kong to restore law and order. Xi has assured that peaceful demonstrators will not be targeted and all those who are arrested will be treated in accordance with international human rights law. However, many in Hong Kong and abroad have expressed skepticism regarding the extent to which Chinese troops will exercise restraint towards demonstrators. Well, that's definitely something. Alright, let's continue our trend of tying up loose ends, which brings us to our next expansion goal, Taiwan. Obviously, there's a lot of backstory here, unfinished civil war, two regions having a different economic system and political system, and we have to decide whether to recognize their independence, go for peaceful unification, or who am I kidding? We're going to war. Following rising tensions with Taiwan, the PLA Navy has imposed a blockade on Taiwan's Kinmen Matsu Islands. Peace is a thing of the past. With the blockade of the Taiwanese islands and the end of the US-Taiwan Relations Act, we can begin the road to war against Taiwan, and in addition to external operations, we must prepare internally for the war that is to come. In a further escalation of the Taiwan Strait crisis, China has fired artillery at military installations on the island of Kinmen. War is coming. Primarily, 4 armies will be responsible for our operation to invade Taiwan. There'll be 1 army landing at Taipei, 1 at Taichung, 1 at Tainan, and finally the troops in Xiamen will cross the strait to invade Kinmen. And with all this preparation done, tensions across the Taiwan Straits have reached boiling points. Our ancestors called for blood. The time has come to unleash the might of the People's Liberation Army on our historical foes. And let's slip the dogs of war. Let us begin the Chinese invasion of Taiwan. The Middle Kingdom has historically played an important role in the East Asia region. Now that the Chinese people have started recovering from the position of weakness, it is time for us to resume our central position in the region. Now that we've completed our national aggression, it's time for us to move on to our regional influence, starting with, of course, the South China Sea. Now, the South China Sea dispute is one of those situations which is easier to explain with a map than with words. Yeah, pretty big mess. There are overlapping claim areas from 4 countries, but for all intents and purposes, it doesn't matter. They're all ours. The 9-dash line has demarcated our historical claim to predominance over the South China Sea. We should maintain our sovereignty over the disputed territories that lie within this boundary in order to ensure our access to the resources and strategic value of the area. And because, of course, this is rightful Chinese territory, it is obviously justified for us to carry out fleet exercises and build islands in the areas. And oh, did I mention? We should raise tensions in the region in order to increase the likelihood of a crisis which we can exploit to our advantage. That's right, border wars, not real wars. No, not over a few islands, but border wars. So, let's take them out one by one, shall we? And there we go. The South China Sea Islands are now ours. As you probably noticed, there is still one focus I have yet to do in this focus branch, which is demanding Vietnam's submission. But that would be getting ahead of ourselves. I mean, after all, we're still dealing with territories that are considered to be Chinese. So we'll deal with this puppeting stuff later. Meanwhile, there's still one big border dispute that we have to deal with, which is our border with India, more specifically the province of Arunachal, Pradesh, as well as some minor ones in Bhutan. Basically, our big strategy here is to ally with countries opposed to India, as well as those who do not as well. Despite initially sharing close ties with India, Bangladesh has in the past decades been drawn into our orbit. Look, we're just making friends. Of course, when talking about enemies of India, we also cannot possibly forget Pakistan, a fundamentalist Islamist country that is, as you know, very compatible with our ideology. And now with our venture with both Bangladesh and Pakistan secured, we can test the waters with the Doklam Road standoff. If Bhutan and India wish to respond, let them. This will be a good opportunity to test their combat readiness. And finally, after all this preparation, we shall strike across the Himalayas. And should we be successful in our endeavor, we will have taken back territory that is rightfully ours. Having routed our opponents, our supremacy over the territories of South Tibet, known to our enemies as Arunachal Pradesh, is now assured. A glorious victory. Okay, with our victory in the Indian border conflict, we have actually secured 99.9% of all our claimed territories. There is one petty exception which I will solve later on, but the point is we'll now be making the jump from annexing claimed territories to puppeting and influencing major countries. Allow me to introduce to you the East Asian Plan, which aims to puppet the countries of Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. Let's begin with Korea. As you all may know, Korea is divided into 2 countries, North and South. One famous for, I don't know, Squid Games and Gangnam Style. The other famous for creating mass nuclear weapons. Anyway, these 2 countries, they don't like each other very much. And between them, one of them is closer to us, while one of them is not. So regarding this Korean issue, we are faced with 3 options, but you already know which one I'm going to choose, so let's just get into the juice. The main problem we face here is that America has guaranteed South Korea and provided military support to them. So if we can stop the support and we help out our friend Best Korea here, then we're gold. Alright, perfect. The Americans withdrew the guarantee even before we did this focus. So it's all smooth sailing from here. The time has come to settle old scores and bring an end to the unsustainable division of the Korean peninsula. This division has separated families, crippled the proud nation, given our enemies a foothold in our immediate sphere of influence. Now, little does our friend funeral committee here know. They're not enjoying all of this for free. No. Remember what I said about puppeting countries? Well, we're starting here. Throughout the playthrough, I've been building up influence in a lot of countries, North Korea included, which means we now have over 80% influence over North Korea, and that's just what's needed for us to coerce this funeral committee into choosing a leader loyal to us to guide them in the coming war. Now with the right leader in place, we can move our troops across the Yalu River and carry out operations for the reunification of Korea. And there we go. After Korea, the next country to deal with is, of course, Japan. Ah yes, Japan, the country responsible for the terrible act of creating the animation genre that led to the Mole Order. Oh, and they also deny war crimes. Anyways, the remaining 0.1% of our unclaimed territory that I talked about actually comes in the form of the Sanaku or Diaoyu Islands held by the Japanese, an island which boasts a population of 1. We're gonna kindly ask the Japanese government to hand this island back to us, and wouldn't you know it, they refused. Let's do it the hard way then. We regularly probe Japan's air defenses by sending our aircraft into their airspace. It would be all too easy to use one of these instances to spark a much larger crisis. The East China Sea has erupted into conflict following a confrontation between Chinese and Japanese aircraft. Japanese aircraft were fired upon, resulting in the deaths of several Japanese pilots and the loss of multiple aircraft. Like North Korea, we have built up a lot of influence in Japan over the years. So making use of this chaos, we will launch a coup to put the Japanese Communist Party into power. After which we will puppet Japan, and just like that, the 3rd largest economy in the world is in our hands. Now, don't mind if I do. The final country we have to deal with in our regional aggression is Vietnam. Recently, our relationship with Vietnam has soured. This situation cannot be allowed to continue. Now, it might not seem like it, but Vietnam is actually backed by the entire ASEAN. So if they reject our proposal to puppet them, we could get into a massive conflict. Luckily though, seeing our million troops in the border and also how we dealt with Japan and Korea, Vietnam has made the wise choice and they're now under our grip. And that is that. After our regional expansion, we have gained all of our claimed territories, and Korea, Japan, and Vietnam, 3 very big countries, are under our helm. To say we are unstoppable regionally would be an understatement. So with all of this power, it's finally time for us to complete our last stage of aggression: global domination. dynasties considered the outside world beyond China's immediate periphery as not worthy of our attention. This was what led China to fall behind the industrialized nations of the West. We will not make this same mistake again. The first step, comrades, to global domination is securing our sphere of influence. Of course, as of now, we have already secured Vietnam, Korea, and Japan under our belt, but that won't mean much unless we materialize it into an alliance. Currently, the Shanghai 5 grouping acts as a way for us to interact closely with Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. These interactions have been valuable but could be improved upon, and our ultimate goal is for this organization to develop into a full-fledged military alliance similar to NATO. So let's get started. The first problem we come across when building this alliance is with Russia. They could be equal partners with us, or we can dominate the alliance. Well, there's no global domination if we share equal power with someone, right? Yeah, well, apparently Russia didn't appreciate what we did that much and they quitted the SCO. But either way, our partnership with Russia was never going to last forever. Our shared allies must now make a choice between siding with us and siding with our enemy. And now with that, the time has come to unlock the SCO's full potential and bolster the organization's institution for military cooperation to the point where our joint command and control can be as sufficient as NATO's. If a war is coming, we will be ready. Our first step to global domination is complete, and as a result of that, we have created a buff Shanghai Pact, including countries across East Asia, Central Asia, and even the Caucasus. Now, comrades, I hear you ask, what's next? Well, our second step towards global domination would come in the form of securing previously loose ends. Obviously, a few years back, we successfully took the province of Arunachal, Pradesh from India, but that's not going to do. The fact of the matter is, India will always be our rival in the region, so we have to take them down for good. With this focus that finally brings our partners, Pakistan and Sri Lanka, into our alliance, we can swing into action. Should our influence in Bhutan become sufficiently large, we will be able to annex the country without a war. Without war, I hear you say? Well, yeah, Bhutan has a grand total of 1 division and it's parked in their mountain province instead of their capital. So it's not that controversial to say that this isn't that much of a war. Okay, after Bhutan, we will launch military operations in Nepal since apparently there are Maoists there that would support us. But actually that isn't the main point. You see, the main point is that India actually guarantees Nepal. So by invading Nepal, this would act as a casus belli for the Second Sino-Indian War. For a war plan against India, to be honest, there doesn't need to be any fancy war plans. By sheer numbers alone, the Shanghai Pact and our military has grown so much that we outnumber the Indians like 4-1. So really, our plan for India would simply be moving across their border and avoiding these nasty mountainous regions by getting our allies to invade through their borders. So let's get ready to run across the Indian Peninsula and let us start the Second Sino-Indian War. I think with this massive invasion of India, it's time for the mask to truly come off. We had to assure the world that we were not seeking hegemony in past decades when our nation was in a much weaker position. However, we no longer have to maintain this facade and can instead openly strive to replace the United States as sole global hegemon. Comrades, through all this tribulation, we have finally reached the endgame, and now we have a straightforward task at hand: tearing the global order asunder. For our first step towards global domination, we will approach the bear's backyard. Responding to our supposed undermining of their international position, the Russian government has declared a state of war on us 2 months after the capitulation of India. The Sino-Russian War, in all its might, has officially begun. Our goal? To raise the Chinese flag in the Kremlin before 2017. December 2016. Exactly 1 month after the Russian declaration of war, Moscow has been taken. So far throughout our campaign, we have taken large swathes of central Russia, the Caucasus, and even Siberia. Yet the Russian army and the Russian government lives on. So it will seem, comrades, we will have to continue our crusade across Russia, and we will likely have to reach the Arctic before the Russian bear gives in. And there we go. With the Treaty of Novokozensk, Primoye and the Kuril Islands have been ceded to us and Japan respectively, and the Communist Party of Russia has been put into power under our helm. I want you to take this in for a moment. A Shanghai Pact stretching from the icy fields of the Arctic to the blistering lands of India. I believe it is time for us to initiate the fourth and final step towards global domination: the invasion of America. Our planned invasion of America will consist of the largest amphibious invasion of human history. Over 600,000 Chinese troops will move across thousands of miles of the Pacific Ocean to land on southern California. Once we have secured the defensive perimeter around the Rockies, we will send over another 600,000 Chinese troops in an attempt for a general push towards the East Coast. Make no mistake, this will be the most ambitious invasion of human history, and for that matter, the largest war in human history. But as we've already taken half the world prior to this, I guess it wouldn't be an untenable task. So comrades, I guess I'll see you on the other side. Well. As California reigns in hellfire, as droves of Chinese troops rush on its beaches, as mainland America embraces the full might of war for the first time since the Civil War, one thing is made clear: the Chinese invasion has begun. After some consolidation, we have secured a beachhead in California, for now. Of course, this force alone is not enough to invade the whole of America, which is why we'll be sending our second wave of reinforcements across the Pacific now. For now, our objective is just to hold the ground. Alright, with our second wave of reinforcements fully in place, we will push now and we are going to try something called the average HOI4 AI strategy, which is basically blindly pushing against the whole front. It won't be pretty, yes, there will certainly be a lot of red, but right now I think it's the most effective way of gouging American weaknesses. And there we have it. The first breakthrough for us, it would seem, would come in Oregon. And as a result of this breakthrough, 15 juicy divisions have been encircled. Let's see now, comrades, if we can capitalize on this breakthrough and possibly create another breakthrough on the front lines. And would you look at that, the second breakthrough for us would come in the form of New Mexico. Another 5 or 6 divisions have been encircled here, and I believe if we can manage to close down these pockets and shorten our front lines, we have a genuine chance of completely collapsing the American lines. Oh, and it seems like the Americans have left the entire Texan front empty. Our pushes, although initially difficult, have been getting easier and easier. And surely this means the American defeat is at sight.
Attention all Americans. The Chinese are advancing on all sides. Our defenses are breaking. America is doomed.
months now it has been since the start of the war, and we have now taken roughly half of the American mainland. Compared to the start of the war, American lines are now brittled, bashed and bruised. We outnumber them 3, 4 or even 5 to 1 in some parts of the front. And with this advantage, I believe it is the right time for us to launch one final and hopefully short dash towards the East Coast. It is now just over 1 year since the start of the Sino-American War, and Uncle Sam, it would seem, is on its last legs. All we need now is one more big push. So it is done. America has fallen. With the fall of America, comrades, the whole world is essentially under our rule. Of course, the decadent NATO still lives on in Western Europe. It's a shame that I was getting all prepared to invade them only to have them push out. But no matter, for despite what faction controls Europe, we are unstoppable on the global stage. Unstoppable. We are now the uncontested global superpower. And with that, it's only fit for us to declare a new mandate of heaven, a new imperium. The age of empire and the Sino-centric world order will be imposed on the rest of the globe, whether it likes it or not. There will be no countries to tell us what we can or cannot invade. Mongolia, you're one of us. What's that taste in the air? That's right, it's the taste of global domination. There is no century of humiliation anymore, or the American, the German century. No. Starting from now, the 21st century will be the Chinese century. 而这就是我们截出今天视频的地方。我大陆和台湾来的朋友，很对不起，你们要忍受一下我这口烂透的普通话。尽管我一向的上片记录也不是特别佳，但是我9个月没有视频对我来说也是新低，因此对此我非常对不起大家。我们下一次挑战18个月吧。另外，对于那些好奇的人，如果你想跟垂直视频来玩 Millennium Dawn 的中国，你会发现那是没可能的，因为我在视频的小部分是用了 console commands。相信我，我真的尽了力，但是有些 focuses 我真的没他的办法。最后，我的频道在录影时非常接近1万名订阅者，因此还没有订阅的朋友，我请你们按一按下方的红色按钮吧，好吧？那么我希望在近期内能够再看到你们吧，再见。